It is another edition of the Florida Man and Friends podcast, Rivals.com's basketball podcast that I hope you're enjoying. I'm Rob Cassidy, national recruiting analyst at Rivals.com, and I'm joined by fellow national recruiting analyst, Dan McDonald. Dan, what's up, man? It's a big week for us here, where people are going to cuss at us and tell us to jump off the causeway and everything else. But, you know, we live for the rankings.
We're an hour in, and neither one of us have been cussed out yet, so I think we're doing all right here.
Yeah, I've gotten a couple very polite, you know, you can't tell me there are 30 players in the country better than so-and-so texts, but I have not gotten throw yourself off a bridge yet.
I got a thank you text.
Hey, from a kid or a coach or what?
How about that? Local coach here in Atlanta.
Man, you don't get that a lot. Those
Not often.
I printed out and put it on my wall.
Yeah, possibly.
So let's talk about the Bills. We'll get into the rankings. I continue to win money on the Buffalo Bills.
Well, hold on. Weren't they 7-point favorite this week? Or did you go money line?
Yeah, when you take the over.
Oh, okay.
That's the move with Josh Allen. Yes. I continue to lose money on every other team I ever bet on. But the Bills are steadfast. How are you feeling about that, man? Are they going to win the Super Bowl?
You know what? I was telling my uncle the other day before the game, I was like, I either felt like they were going to lose on Saturday or we're going to the Super Bowl. So here we are. We won the first game. We're going to the Super Bowl.
I am wearing my Mets hat that also pictures Western New York, though. We can just – maybe I'll make a pencil spot for Buffalo here. Anyway, I put it on for you. Let's move out of football, though. Let's move into the rankings. Here we go. New number one, I think you and I are both on the same page here. I think Russ was too, Russ Wood, who also helps with the rankings. I think it was pretty much consensus. We both love Chet Homlgren at the top. I think a lot of what he did on that national televised game against Imani Bates really kind of helped sway me. I'll be honest, when I went into watching him in that game, I was of the opinion this is a very good basketball player. He's a little light. Maybe he's not number one. By the time that game was over, my mind was completely changed. He looked like a very, very rare prospect. And the way he handles the ball, I think, at 7 foot really is what sets him apart.
Yeah, so I'm almost positive. I could go back and look at past rankings updates. I've always kind of been in favor of him being number one because, like, you just don't find dudes that are 7'1" that can do what he does. Like, he's got the skill, he's got the athleticism, and for being 7'1" in high school, most of those kids are kind of like awkward and just don't move as fluidly as he does. I mean, he's
and they
impressive.
Definitely don't handle the ball like that.
No, and then the thing that I think everybody got to see in the nationally televised game, which I personally had never really seen that, like, obviously, was he was getting feisty, man. Like, he's got a little fiery streak to him. Like, I'd never really seen that before. He talks a little smack. I'm all about that.
No, I think college fans, if he ends up there, are going to love him. I think you and I both think he's going to end up at Gonzaga. He's a fun player to watch just because of the rare skill set. Like, I saw somebody refer to him as, in tongue-in-cheek way, 7 foot prospect and also kind of a point guard, which he kind of is. Like, he brings the ball up the court for that team at 7 foot, and he looks pretty natural doing it.
Yeah, and I'll be really curious. I mean, assuming if he goes to Gonzaga or wherever, but let's say it's Gonzaga, I'd be really curious to see how they fit him into their offense next year, and how much of that kind of stuff do they let him do, or do they kind of rein him in a little bit? I'll be curious to see how that plays out.
I would assume you're not going to see him taking the ball up the floor like that, but I think that Mark Few has proven that he can kind of game plan around his best players' skill sets. You look at what he's done this year with Suggs. I think that probably lends itself to maybe encouraging Chet to, okay, I'm a player with an NBA future. I'm a player that is on the top of 2022 draft boards. He's listed number one right now if you look at a lot of those mock drafts that people do. And Mark Few has got a guy like that right now who he's kind of, he's shaping into a guy who went in there not considered to be the number one pick and may now end up being it. Even though Cade Cunningham has looked incredible too. That's a discussion we've already had on this show. But I think we'll see Chet end up at Gonzaga, and I think people are going to love him there.
Yeah, and I do think, like, Mark Few's had guys who have the similarities to Chet, but none of those guys have, like, the all-around game that he has. Like, I think he'll be the most skilled forward center that I think he's had in his incredible run at Gonzaga.
And for slight, I shouldn't say small because he's not small. For as slight as Chet is, and he does need to add muscle, and that's no doubter. He doesn't really get pushed around in the paint. You saw him against Imani in that ESPN2 game, and he wasn't the strongest guy on the floor, but he holds his own down there as far as from a rebound.
He fights for sure.
What else you got? You got anything else on Chet, or you want to move on here?
I think we've covered the Chet Homlgren experience.
Yeah,
Obviously, and I think we could both agree on this. Like, as good as the rest of those guys are in the top 5, like it wasn't particularly tough to make that call.
no, it wasn't, and those guys are good. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, I love Hardy as much as everybody. He'll probably end up in the G League. You know, you and I are both very high on Jabari and both very high on Baldwin. I think it's a really strong top 5. I really do. You know, this class might not be as strong as some other classes when you get into a depth perspective, when you get down into the 80s and, you know, whatever. But I think the top of this class does have some depth to it. And I think all of those guys, you know, have got a real shot.
Yeah, another thing, so you mentioned Jabari. Along the same lines as Chet, I've seen Jabari kind of show a little bit of fiery streak in the last few times I've seen.
You should intercede here and tell people that we're talking about Jabari Smith in case, you know, nobody's on a first name basis with all these guys.
Yeah, so Jabari Smith, number 5, going to Auburn.
There you go.
No, he's like Jabari's the kind of guy, like he doesn't have to score a ton to really have a big impact on the game. I think I saw him play, it was a month or so ago. He probably had, I'm not exaggerating, probably 15 blocks. And this is playing against Wheeler too now. This is a team with Division I kids. Caleb Washington's going to Dayton, the top 100 guy. Isaiah Collier, somebody you might see in our 2023 rankings on Friday. Like, they've got guys. Jaheim Hudson's going to Florida Gulf Coast. He had like 15 blocks. Probably had 15 rebounds. I think he finished like maybe 13 to 14 points. But, like, you couldn't have left that game not thinking, like, this kid is going to be unbelievable at Auburn and beyond. And the cool thing for Auburn is with Sharif Cooper coming in and playing awesome on Saturday.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, if you can get him, if he comes back and you got Justin Powell back, and, like, that's a pretty electric little trio right there.
We should touch on Sharif real quick and just the situation. It is so rare to build expectations for a guy like that and then have, have that happen, have him not be able to play, and then him to come in cold like that and meet those expectations. You know, I think 8 out of 10 of those situations, there's there's at least some kind of, I don't want to say learning curve, but some kind of adjustment process where, you know, maybe your first game inserted back into the lineup like that isn't electric, but that did not happen. And, you know, I was really, really impressed by that.
Yeah. And it wasn't, if you watch, like, usually he'll take, like you said, like, it'll take guys a few games to get in. I thought Sharif came out and maybe, I don't know, the first half of the first half, he was a little bit, you could tell, trying to feel his way out. This is a different speed than playing against my teammates in practice kind of deal. But, man, once he got going, it was fun to watch. I mean, 26-9. I think he had maybe 5 turnovers, but I think Bruce Pearl would probably say he could live with that. I mean,
yeah, especially in a debut,
but it was also a faster paced game. I mean, it was like 90-something. I mean, you get a faster paced game, you're playing more possession, so 5 turnovers doesn't kill you as much as playing a slower game. So
no, and it also was encouraging because of the way he was just kind of thrown into the fire here. You know, there was no warm up game against Prairie View A&M or anything like that.
And the thing I would tell people too, like, so Sharif went to high school about 15 minutes away from where I live, and I've been watching Sharif since he was a freshman. The thing you notice about him is it can be both maddening, but also like, oh my God, this kid's next level is he kind of has a nonchalance to his game where he never gets sped up that you can never figure out, is he just not playing hard or is he just so under control that you can't speed him up and get him out of his thing? And I think there was a little bit of that on Saturday. Like he's just so smooth with the ball and just has such a great feel. And you saw the oop to, I think, Devin Cambridge. He had the one nice play. I split the pick and roll, and he's just such a good pick and roll guard, which, I mean, I think that's almost the most important trait for a point guard to have these days. He's so good at it. And I think I was kind of guilty for a while of kind of undervaluing how good Sharif is. But man, that was a pretty good first show in college.
No kidding. You know, first impressions are worth something. That's a big one. That was an impromptu Sharif discussion.
Yeah, no, we did. That was not on the docket.
No, that's good though. I mean, give the Auburn fans something to listen to. You know, I'll tell you what. I'll say this for the Auburn people. I enjoy that message board more than maybe any message board.
The best.
They're like legitimately funny. Like they know the line too. Like they know how to call me an asshole.
And I think a lot of them, at least my interactions, they know they're ridiculous.
No, like, they're very self-aware and very funny group. Like,
yeah, like I think most fan bases just like they're such homers and they don't even realize how far down the homer path they are. I think Auburn fans, they're homers for sure, and they should be. They're Auburn
fans.
Most of them went there. Yeah, they're fanatics. But I have like some of they'll call me out on stuff, but it's a funny call, and I'm like, I'm all about a good, funny, good-natured, call out.
They are by far, they're at least a top 3 internet fan base. Like, I think they're very funny. I think the K-State fans are very funny. They're pretty good. And then if you ever get to mix it up with Michigan fans, they're also pretty fun.
I've not experienced. Most of my experiences are SEC related, and I mean, there's good ones, there's bad ones. I mean, there's others that aren't as good that we're not going to call out on this podcast. But there's some that I just think are they're really far down that homer path, but they're buried in it. They don't even know that they're there. So
but
Auburn fans, special shout out. And so one of the times I got called out because I'd post on there, but like my profile pic on my account, it was just like a blank face, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are you going to come to this board as a national analyst and post stuff and not have a picture? So I'm like, you know what? That's a fair point. So if you go look at any post I've made, and it's been a while, I got Coach Taylor from Friday Night Lights, which is the greatest TV show in the history of TV shows.
It is a good one.
Yeah, so I'm Coach Taylor on their message board. But I'm all about Auburn fans.
Who's your favorite Dylan Panther?
Oh, man, they put him in a spot. So it's not Riggins because that's the easy answer. You don't get to see Jason Street but one game. Saracen smashed two of now. I think by process of elimination, and I know he crossed over to the other side, but probably Landry.
Yeah, I couldn't get Landry out of my head when I saw him being like a crazy murderer on Breaking Bad.
Yeah, I think
Landry doing.
But they had him kill somebody on Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, and then they erased everything, right? Like everything that happened in season 2 was during the writer's strike. So like Landry and that girl killed a dude, and then they just remember smashing a bipolar girlfriend, and they just acted like none of that ever happened.
Then he like this. Yeah, the writer's strike happened. Smash apparently tore his ACL during the writer's strike. And then he comes back in season 3 and he's working out, trying to get to college. And
how about they had Buddy adopt a kid from Mexico or something, and he was on the team. And then
so he was in prison. His family was from Mexico, and then he joined.
Buddy adopts him, and then when season 3 starts, he's gone and he's never spoken of again.
Yeah, maybe he was a senior that graduated.
And Buddy kicked him out of the house.
or that I don't know. Season 2 got weird. Season 3 and beyond, it was the best show ever. I still watch it. I still go back and watch it on a loop. Like I'll start watch all 5 seasons and then kind of cut it out. A few months later, I go back and start watching again.
I'd like to go back and rewatch it. All right, let's refocus on the rankings. We talked about Chet. We had our impromptu Auburn fan discussion. Some more changes in 2021. We made Kowacie Reeves, the Florida commit, a 5-star. He was a 4 originally, and that was mainly based on your evaluations because you're more familiar with him. What kind of played into us moving him up?
So I would say this. So I saw him play right after Christmas at the Tournament of Champions over here at Wheeler in Atlanta. And so Kowacie to me has always, I think we kind of talked about this a little last week. He's always been the 6'5", 6'6", long, athletic he's just got a really, really good jump shot, which those traits alone get you really fired up about a kid. Like, and he can really, really shoot it. He's got a high release. So like all that you feel like it translates. But where I've noticed more recently is he's filled out. He's gotten stronger. He's going off the dribble. He's finishing. He's rebounding. His dad told me on Saturday, I think he had 6 or 7 assists in a little local rivalry game. So they're kind of thinking like, okay, maybe we can kind of expand his game now and get him to be playing a little more of a point forward kind of role. And I think all that's got to get you really excited if you're Mike White and you got that kid coming in next year. The comparison I've always kind of used for him is like a long-term comparison is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is from here in Georgia. Like I think there's a lot of similarities. I think Kowacie's probably filled out to a point where he's a little bit ahead of Kentavious at the same age. But just a reminder, Kentavious went to Georgia, had a good freshman year, not great, wasn't a great team. But then the sophomore year, he came back, and Mark Fox, who was the coach at the time, kind of reined him in. He went from being a volume shooter that didn't shoot great percentages, but I think he averaged maybe 15 a game as a freshman, to shooting really, really good percentages as a sophomore. I think he averaged 18 and 7 or 8 rebounds a game. He was SEC Player of the Year and 8th pick in the NBA draft after a sophomore year. So, maybe that doesn't completely fall in line with what Kowacie is at Florida, but I think he's kind of headed down that same path to where he'll be a really good college player and have a chance of playing in the NBA.
Speaking of volume shooters, another guy we moved up was LSU commit Brandon Murray. Plays at IMG. I had a chance to see him twice in the last couple months. He kind of had a reputation of being a volume shooter. He's always been a big-time scorer. He'll get you the points, and he still does that. But his points are seeming to come a little bit neater now. I saw him at IMG hosted this thing called the Sunshine Prep Tournament up there where they had some pretty big-time teams in, and he looked good in that event. He won the MVP of one game I was watching, and they were giving game-by-game MVPs. he's becoming a more complete player where I think he's shooting the ball a little bit better. He's always kind of been able to get to the basket. But what doesn't, his passing is becoming a lot better. Like, this is a guy that doesn't make stupid decisions with the basketball anymore. And I think maybe he did at a time. He's becoming a more well-rounded prospect. That's kind of why we tacked a star onto him and moved him up. So that's good for an LSU class that's suddenly looking pretty good. They've got some firepower there. And, obviously Will Wade knows what to do when they get there. So, I'd be encouraged if I was an LSU fan by what they have coming in. I think Murray has taken exponential steps forward in the last couple months, and he's looked great. On a great team at IMG, it's hard to look great when you're surrounded by that kind of talent, right? He's got Benny Williams on his team. He's got Efton Reed on his team. And he still kind of manages to pop in games. And that's hard to do down there at IMG.
Yeah, and I would say this, too, like for LSU fans for next year, I mean, Cam Thomas is on a scoring tear right now. And he's been one of the best guards in the country. And my guess is he'll at least consider going to the NBA just because guys that can score like that's value right there. But if not, and he match up Murray with a guy like Cam Thomas, that's set for a pretty fun little duo for Will Wade in the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. We were going to talk a lot more about 2022 because those rankings are coming out, but we'll talk about them on the next episode of the podcast. There's not really a lot to say there. We've made some moves. It was hard to make a ton of moves because some guys aren't playing. You don't want to punish guys too bad for not playing. But at the same time, you got to move guys up that have played and looked good, so that knocks them down. And that was kind of like the world's worst jigsaw puzzle, trying to put that together, because it's like you don't want to punish the kid in New Jersey that hasn't played yet. But at the same time, if you move 5 kids above him, it moves him down 5 spots. So I hope that people understand that was kind of part of the puzzle process, where we didn't necessarily drop kids for not playing. We just moved people in front of them.
That's what I always tell people. Like, if you're a kid and you just move down like 3 or 4 spots, or even like up to 10 spots, depending where you are, that's not really you dropping as much as you just find guys that are really good, and we feel like they've got to move up. So if somebody's moving up, somebody's moving down.
It's simple math, and sometimes I think a lot of fans think that they're like, look, all our commits dropped, and it's like, look, everyone dropped. If you moved up a guy from 93 to 3, everyone between 3 and 93, that's just the laws of math. That's it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And then the other thing, too, is the way I always explain to people is when you're in like the 1 to, say, 25, 30 range, any movement there is significant just because it's tougher to move guys at the top. When we start to get down, say, 50 and beyond, there's a lot more wiggle room. So if you move, even like I said, up to 10 spots, like there's just so much more wiggle room there and it's so much more I think the talent level kind of evens off when you get beyond 50 to where you can see a guy and be like, I think he's like 60-ish. And I can see the same guy, think pretty similarly about him, but he's probably more like closer to 100. And neither one of us are probably wrong. It's just.
And it's also, I mean, you got to look at the sample size, especially in this weird year. The sample sizes on these guys are not big right now, right? Like, we could have seen a guy on the worst day of his life or the best day of his life, and just as the sample size
live streams
grows,
too, which is it's gonna be hard to judge. Okay, is that kid 6'4" or is he 6'6"? That's
exactly.
that's important.
So as the sample size grows and we get out more in person and the kids start playing tournaments, everything will kind of write itself out. But we're doing what we can. And speaking of doing what we can, 2023 is coming out, which you want to talk about a jigsaw puzzle. So we did 30, which is fewer than some of the other places have done. I think some people have gone to 50, some people have gone to 100. We felt comfortable with 30. I thought it was a good number. Do you want to talk about some of the more notable guys in there that people might already know?
Yeah, so I would say that conversation is probably got to start with Mikey Williams. He's the one with more Instagram followers than you and I can ever dream of having.
Yeah, but he's still not as famous as Bronny, right? If we're I mean, maybe he is. I don't know. Do you think Mikey?
You want to like do that? We can make like we can do a keeping up with Bronny and Mikey and kind of keep up with who's got the edge on who. And
do you think more casual basketball fans, or not even casual fans, do you think more basketball fans, do you think more NBA fans are familiar with Mikey or Bronny's name?
I would say, Bronny's, I would say Bronny because of his dad, but I would say it's got to be Bronny. That's the correct answer.
People know Mikey.
But Mikey, for not having a dad that might be one of the best players of all time, like, it's pretty impressive how, like, I have just friends here who like will occasionally see something on Instagram with Mikey and be like, hey, do you know this Mikey Williams kid?
No, I mean, and the reasons why are he's a freak athlete, right? He's really good on camera. Can be a real interesting kid, a real smart kid that is engaging, I think. And he's, he's just, the dunks and everything else. He lends himself well to highlights. So I think that's kind of why he's become such a, it doesn't help that he launched a clothing line with Drake. This kid's everywhere.
That'll do it too. That'll help. Yeah. So yeah, it's impressive. I mean, if I ever need somebody to lead my marketing team, Mikey's got it down.
So let's talk about Mikey, because he's obviously a top 10 talent. Some places have him at 2, some places have him a little lower. The kid is all upside. I mean, he's one of the best athletes in this class. There's reason to love him. There's also reason to think that he's got to do some developing, I think, when it comes to taking care of the ball. Sometimes he makes some bad decisions, but he's young. So it was a discussion for us on where to rank this kid. I don't want to give away the rankings because they won't be out when this comes out. I will say that he's, well inside the top 10, well inside the top 5. What do you think of him? How often have you had to see him? I've watched him probably 6 or 7 times. He, the good obviously outweighs the bad. The kid is a tremendous talent. I would like to see him take care of the ball a little bit better, but that will come as he ages.
I would say this. I've seen him twice in person. I've seen him maybe a few other times just watching on TV or online or whatever it is. I think you kind of nailed it. I think his value will be determined by, is he more of a point guard or is he more of a 2 guard?
Yeah, he doesn't.
Because
if
if he learns to be a more of a point guard and he takes care of the ball and he's going to be a scorer and he can keep his teammates involved, then there's a ton of value with that kid. But if he's an undersized 2 guard, to scorer athlete guy, still a lot of value there. He can still be a 5-star, still be maybe a top 10 guy.
Yeah.
But it's just, I think his career could take a couple different directions. And I think, obviously it's on him, but it's on his coaches and trainers and people around him to kind of help coach him along to, hey, what's best for your future? Like, and where do you feel most comfortable? Like, I think there is a couple different paths that could go down. And I'll be curious to see how it goes the next couple of years.
Yeah, and when you're projecting out, he has a lot of the things that coaches can't help, right? Like that athleticism that he has.
Sure, yes.
So you hope that, eventually he just becomes more disciplined. And, we're talking about a sophomore in high school here. So the discipline will come or should come. It's not like because he has some turnover issues right now, we should drop him and knock him, because we are projecting forward. I think that this next year, I think his junior year is going to tell us everything. We're going to see a lot of him on the circuit. God willing, we have a decent circuit this year. And then next season, I think will tell us a lot about the trajectory of Mikey Williams. I think everybody everybody obviously wants him to succeed. It's going to be interesting to see which way he goes, though.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think the other one, we kind of mentioned is Bronny, to see where his career goes. Now, he's kind of almost – there's some of those same questions. Like, is he going to become more of a point guard or is he going to be more of a off guard? And the thing that Bronny's got – and I haven't seen Bronny in person in forever, so it's hard to tell. But it looks like he's in the 6'3", 6'4" range, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So – whereas Mikey, I think, is probably 6'2"-ish. Again, hard to say because I haven't seen him in person in a while. But the thing with Bronny is he shoots it at the same age much better than his dad did. So, he's got a real jumper. He's got a floater. He's got a mid-range shot. And then you see the same basketball IQ that his dad has where he makes some really, really good passes. He can handle the ball. So his versatility is gonna help him long term. But I think I can kind of give this away. He'll be probably towards the middle of that top 30 somewhere, give or take.
I think from a basketball IQ standpoint, he's well ahead of even a Mikey, but that freak athleticism that his dad has and that Mikey has isn't quite there yet.
Yeah, and sometimes kids like that, because Bronny's a true age of a 2023 kid, which not everybody in all classes, some of them are older, some are younger. So sometimes kids just develop at different times. So, it could still come for Bronny that, a year from now, we're talking about his athleticism as his strength. Like, oh, my God, But and it wouldn't be a surprise where that came from, right? But, I think Bronny's got a chance to go up. But it'll be interesting to track his progress the next couple of years.
I think the best thing I can say for us in this is I think we ranked him in a way that we would have ranked him if his name was Bronny Smith. We took the name off of it. And I think where we slotted him, we would have slotted him even if his name was, Stan Jones. And I'm proud of him.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. That's you can't. But at the same time, it's not like we're going to rank him higher because his dad is LeBron James.
Or lower,
or lower. But the thing is, you'd be, and I would do this with almost any professional athlete. that's an advantage for kids. Like, to know they have those bloodlines, but not only do they have the bloodlines, like, they have parents that, like, I mean, who's a sharper dude in basketball right now than LeBron? I mean,
and they've grown up watching it and being around it.
Been around it. Like, that's an advantage. Like, that could be a thing that, keeps his career on the right track. So we'd be dumb not to at least consider it. But yeah, 100%. to say he's not, that he's getting ranked higher because he's LeBron James, like, that's not going to happen. But
no, but people will say that. Like, I will take text messages
100%.
Say that.
Yeah, but like, if you told me that, we were just talking about Tracy McGrady before we came on here. Like, if Tracy McGrady had a son that was like showing the same kind of traits that Tracy McGrady has when he was a player, like, yeah, we'd be dumb not to rank somebody like that's got that in their bloodlines and just bet on it a little bit. So,
can you imagine having to be on this? I mean, I don't think there were rivals. Well, maybe there was. Maybe Bossy was doing it. Did anybody have to rank Jordan's kid, Jeff?
I think his son Jeff. One of his kids is the same age as me. I can't get them confused which one's which, but yeah, one of them went to Central Florida, I believe.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
And then one walked on at Illinois, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. That's a tough situation to be in. Do you want to talk about
neither of them were ever like, I don't think anybody ever had those guys ranked, either one of them, if I remember right.
Let's talk about who we considered for one in 2023. DJ Wagner, son of DeJuan Wagner, was obviously in the discussion. I like Matt Booley a lot. He was in the discussion. The kid in Oregon, who I have not seen in person yet, the Mookie kid, Mookie Cook, was in the discussion. Who else did you think was up there?
For me, those were the main ones. I don't think you're leaving anybody out. Like you said, DJ Wagner, special talent. Matt Bewley, same thing. Mookie Cook, all those guys are really, really good. Thing I like about DJ Wagner most is I think he's got, at least from what I've seen, again, he's somebody I haven't seen in person yet. I've watched a lot online and highlights and everything. Looks like a guy that can be an elite scorer, but also be an elite playmaker for the guys around him. And I think finding the right blend between those two is kind of tough to find. And I cannot wait to see more of him on the circuit this summer.
Let's talk about him real fast, though, because I think everybody thinks he's going to Kentucky. And I could understand why. His dad's got that relationship. John Calipari was at Memphis when his dad was there. Is there a chance that the kid – I mean, you don't want to get too deep into this conversation because he is so young. But the NBA might be there for him by then. I mean, we're projecting ahead there where there might be the one and done rule might be over by the time that this is ready to happen. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays in with his recruitment and how everything kind of shakes out with him.
Yeah, just so people have like a little bit of background. So his dad, DeJuan Wagner, played at Memphis. I was actually just watching the John Calipari 30 the other day, so I kind of pretty fresh in all this. So his dad played his freshman year at Memphis, had a great year, wanted to come back, the story goes. Cal calls him in, rips up his scholarship. You don't have a scholarship here. You're going pro. Makes him go pro. DeJuan has a pretty good rookie year. Gets sick. I believe he had colitis or something along those lines. Had to have his colon cut out. And for whatever reason, that made him just to where he couldn't compete in the NBA anymore. And he was out of the NBA by the time I think he was 21. But thankfully, I think he ended up making $7 or $8 million in that off his rookie contract. Whereas he comes back to Memphis for another year or two, he never gets to the NBA, never makes millions, and now he's got to hope he finishes school and gets a job like the rest of us got, right? So Cal kind of said that was the moment where he's like, we've got to push these kids out and push them to the NBA as soon as they're ready, because you just never know when something like that can happen.
You got to get that money.
So that's the good of that is I'm sure DJ's dad, DeJuan, is like, Cal took care of me. I'm going to do what I can to take care of him. So maybe that does help DJ Wagner go to Kentucky. The other side of it is, what if the same thing happens to something like similar happens to his son? Like he like you said, the NBA rule might change by then, and maybe DeJuan's like, DJ, I know you want to play for Cal. I know I'd love you to play for Cal, but go get the money while it's there, man. Like, and hope you have a longer stay than his dad did, unfortunately. But
his dad was fun to watch, man.
Oh my goodness. I remember like his freshman year at Memphis. I want to say I was probably in high school then, and like I don't think before then I ever really watched Memphis play. His dad came in, and then I think Derrick Rose was not far behind him, and yeah, Cal had some teams at Memphis, man.
All right, what else? You want to go back to 2021 real quick? We kind of jumped over some stuff.
Yeah, we did have a so we had one of the guys we moved up a ton here and is Jonas Aidoo. I think we ended up moving him up 70 spots or so. I think he's at 31 in the rankings.
Yep.
The comparison I've seen with Jonas Aidoo, that I don't think it's crazy, but I think we got to remember we're comparing him to an NBA All-Star here. But
Yeah,
you've seen the Joel Embiid comparisons, right?
Yeah, I've seen him.
Yeah, so Jonas is super, super talented. And the good thing about Jonas is I had coaches about it, 6-8 months ago call me, ask me about him and, what their thoughts were. And a lot of them were like, we love the talent we see. Like, you see him put the ball on the floor and get to the rim and dunk on guys. You see him hit jump shots. You see him dominate the boards and block shots. And you see all that in spurts. But there's still too many games at that point, this is back in the summer, where Jonas ends up with 6 points, 4 rebounds, and maybe a block or two. It's like, you see the potential, but you're worried about the production. And are they ever going to fly? Because that's the thing that college coaches, it just drives them mad when they get it wrong either way. Well, here we are, January 2021, and by all accounts, Jonas and he started to do this towards the end of the summer, become a more consistently productive guy, to where, like you see in our rankings, like I think we feel a lot better about betting on him staying on this trajectory and and becoming a really, really good player that, again, could have a chance to play in the NBA.
There are 7-footers that in these classes in 2021 and 2022 that people are so high on that are good players, but there are very few of them. Chet's one of them, and there are other ones that are 7 foot, legitimate 7 foot, and move the way Jonas moves. It's not natural. I mean, it's in a good way. You don't see a lot of dudes that size with that kind of athleticism. He's a little bit more explosive. He's got a higher vertical than some other 7-footers. You love the way he moves. And I think that's what kind of solidified it for me, was watching some of these other 7-footers. I won't name names because, you don't want to compare them negatively to the kid. But just from an athleticism standpoint and an upside standpoint and even a skill standpoint, Jonas seems to be ahead of those dudes. So I couldn't justify having some of those guys ahead of him in the rankings.
Yeah, the other thing with Jonas, too, is I think I have this story right. He was as a senior in high school, between his junior and senior year of high school, he went from about 6'6" to 6'9", and then he kind of kept shooting up. So this is his post-grad year. So he was a senior in high school last year and didn't have the recruiting options he wanted, but some schools were kind of starting to fish around. Plays the summer with Team Curry, obviously not in the Under Armour circuit, but just in events and all over the place, and had a really good summer. And, I think the thing you got to factor in, like back in the summer when I was saying that his production when I was there, is this is a kid that's coming off a 6 or 7 inch growth spurt in a pretty short amount of time. So sometimes it just takes a minute to get used to playing at 7 foot and not 6'6" or 6'7". And I think that's where you kind of start to see the growth. Like you said, like he moves so naturally for a 7-footer who's only been a 7-footer for not even a year probably. So
I just got to wait a minute. Hold on. Are we going to do live reactions?
Negative review?
Let's jump off the causeway here. No, this is actually a thank you text from a college coach.
Wow.
Yeah. How about that? But we won't. I thought for sure when I opened that it was going to be bad news. But
all right, hey, I just want we got to make sure everybody understands that college coaches don't care about rankings.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they don't.
They don't care, but they just text us and ask us to make sure we rank their guys higher and all that kind of thing.
And I mean, some of them have bonuses dependent on recruiting, right? Like
which is the most ridiculous thing.
The thing is, I just wouldn't lie about it. Like if I was a college coach, Urban Meyer said this best once. He stood up behind a podium and somebody asked him about star rankings. He said, if they're keeping score, we want to win.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I mean, do we always get it right? No. Like that's the one thing. I sit down with fans and even college coaches and high school coaches. This is hard. Like, good luck. We're gonna miss. I'm not gonna sit here and think that I am the end-all, be-all talent evaluator as somebody that played basketball at a high school level and not beyond. But I've been around the game a very long time. I've covered it. I think I know my share about it. It's been more than a decade covering basketball on the college level. I am not the end-all, be-all. If your opinion is different than mine, you could be right. And I will tell you down the road when it turns out that you are right, that you're right. But we do our best. We do see a lot of players. And it's hard. It's a hard job. And it's hard to keep people happy.
Yeah, and I think I always tell people, too, about rankings is when we miss on guys, it's generally not a talent thing. Because it's not hard to walk into a gym like the guy we were just talking about, Jonas Aidoo. Oh, my God, that guy's 7 foot. Awesome. He's skilled and athletic. Like, anybody off the street could walk in and see that. But where I think you miss on kids is, do you underrate how hard they work, how coachable they are, how good of a teammate they are, and just those kind of things? Or do you not realize that maybe the guy isn't good in those areas and isn't going to live up to the hype for whatever reason? So I think if you ever look in the rivals rankings and see a kid that's a 5-star that, never really makes a huge splash in college, or if you see an unranked guy that makes a huge splash in college, chances are we didn't miss on the talent. We missed on the intangibles.
And sometimes systems are important too. Where
Yeah.
where they're going to go, who's coaching them, what system they're playing in. I agree with you. Like I could walk, I could walk my sister, who doesn't exist, into a gym and be like, point out the Division I athlete in here. And it's not real. Probably the 6'8" guy that's dunking. That's not real hard. It's it's separating the bottom of the list that gets tough.
Yeah, and just trying to and that's why I always tell people I feel like I can do a better job ranking kids in Georgia than I can nationally, because I do get to I see them all the time, so I know the talent, but then I also get to know about them. I get to know them and kind of what makes them tick, so I can factor in those intangibles a lot more, to where how to where to bet on guys, and that guy's probably not a great bet. Mm-hmm. And there's some of those in the 150 where I would bang the table and be like, yes, that's the guy you want in your program. And there's some guys that, maybe you go the other way on. But no, I mean, it's imperfect science, and there's so many variables at play that nobody's ever going to get it perfectly.
Let's touch on Wes Cardette from West Oaks real quick. We moved him up about 10 spots. He is looking real hard at Alabama. He's looking real hard at K-State. There are some other schools in there, I think, that are alive. I love the kid. I love the kid's motor. I think he is he's not as long as some guys in the position, but he's as the tenacious a defender as there is. He makes his own shot. He gets to the basket incredibly well. And he's becoming a better shooter. I saw him, when was the last time I saw him? At the Hoops Exchange, I guess it was preseason. And, he was becoming a better perimeter shooter, got a little bit more consistent. I like the kid. I think the kid should have more. I mean, he's got a long list of major offers. Wes Cardette isn't slept on. But I think he should have more options than he does right now. I really like him. We moved him up kind of based on my recommendation, and I think, we'll end up looking pretty good for that.
Yeah, I think so. I only got to see him, I think, twice this summer with Team Breakdown, and I think he's an example of a guy that coaches watching on a live stream, it's not going to pop the same way as if you watch him in person. He's got a toughness to him.
He doesn't get tired.
Yeah, he's really good. When you mentioned moving him up, that was no issue with me. I think he's a heck of a prospect, and he kind of fits some of those schools you mentioned, like Alabama and Kansas State. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy that, depending on how long he waits for making a decision, that you see more schools jump in on the mix for him.
Do you have anything else you want to touch on, or you want to call it good for the day?
One guy we moved into the top 150 this time was Elijah Tucker, who signed with Xavier. He's another kid living here in Atlanta, but he's been off to a killer start to his senior year. Every game, it seems like he's got double-double. He's been at over 30 points a bunch of times, and 15 rebound games and all the above. And kind of another guy. So his parents weren't NFL athletes, but I believe his dad was played in the NFL, was an offensive tackle at Tennessee. Mom played basketball for Pat Summitt at Tennessee. And when you yeah, so when you see a kid that's got that kind of bloodline, so I've watched him practice a few times too, and he's a kid that's always jumping on the front of the line to do drills, and doesn't make the same mistake twice. So the intangibles are there, like I was just mentioning, and now that his skill level keeps getting better and better, I think Travis Steele and assistant coach Jonas Hayes, who recruits Georgia for them, did a terrific job, kind of stealing one from the schools down this area. So
I've got a nice little class there, Xavier too.
He'll be, and another special Xavier shout out too. How about Colby Jones with the dagger 3 yesterday to beat Providence? And I don't think everybody knows this story. So his grandfather, I believe it was, passed away on Thursday or Friday, and I think his grandfather played a pretty significant role in his life all along. And for him to hit that shot, man, that was pretty cool. Really happy for him, and obviously hate that he had to lose his grandfather, but it's good that he could hit that shot and celebrate with his teammates and kind of have a positive moment.
Yeah, you love to see stories like that. That's a good way to end on a nice positive note.